Hi everyone, and welcome to The Nudge. This is Cecile Ahrens, and I am a clinical therapist in San Diego, California. And today I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about suicide. I've been personally impacted by suicide and the recent deaths of two very well-known public figures, Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, has sent this sense of urgency for me to just help raise some awareness and understanding around this very tragic issue. So I'm literally talking off the cuff here, and I'm going to be looking down from time to time to look at my cheat sheets. So I apologize for that, but this is something I really just felt the need to do today. So obviously, suicide is always heartbreaking when we hear about it. It never is an easy, kind of thing to digest. And there's a lot of, I think, misunderstanding around it. But, suicide is usually someone's attempt to end their pain. It's not always a wish to die. It's usually a desire to end this unspeakable pain that people are feeling. And they think that the only way to really end this pain is for me to end my life. And that's the part that can be really difficult for people to understand. A lot of times, people who end up committing suicide have either diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health conditions or substance abuse, but that's not always the profile. Sometimes it's, a combination of not having enough support, a combination of experiencing life stressors such as financial loss, a recent job loss, a relationship not working out, divorce, someone's personality and coping style, their lack of support, and also the way that that person at the time is processing their pain, their coping style, like I said, could have a lot of influence on how they decide to deal with that particular situation. It could be that they've lived a life of a lot of pain and trauma beginning from childhood, and that they've just had it. It's the accumulated stress on the body and mind of constantly having to survive painful incidents. Sometimes that's what breaks a person's will to live. So it's not an exact science, which is why there's no way, or we haven't figured out a way to prevent it. But I think there are things that we can do as a community to be more active in supporting somebody. And I think the first thing is education, like knowing the signs, right? Recognizing some of the signs. So what might be some of the signs? Like I said, somebody displaying like a mental health, symptoms of a mental health disorder, even though they've never been diagnosed before. So what does depression look like? They're persistently sad. They're having a hard time getting out of bed. They have a lot of negative thinking. There's a lot of kind of insecurity, low motivation, low energy, a sense of a lack of purpose or direction in life, seeming apathetic, kind of starting not to care about what happens to them or their appearance or the world, kind of poor hygiene sometimes, not following through on responsibilities, a sense of indifference. So those are kind of the classic signs of depression, but it doesn't always look like that. So another way it could look at someone who's really anxious and experiencing a lot of stress and feeling really unable to cope with it. Sometimes they might even say that, those words might even come out of their mouth. They might say, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know if I can live through this. Those kinds of, that kind of language is probably something, you should check out with that person if they're expressing that to you. And I'll talk a little bit about some ways how you could do that later. Giving away possessions is sometimes a sign. Withdrawing or isolating. Sometimes high-risk behaviors. So in the case of people with bipolar disorder, for example, if they're exhibiting a lot of mania or high-risk behaviors, they could inadvertently put themselves at risk without knowing. And if they're, if they're having a particularly bad day and they think like driving fast on the freeway is a release, that poor judgment could actually end up, hurting them or killing them. So that might be seen as an accident, but that level of impulsivity sometimes can lead to poor judgment and poor choices. And along the lines of impulsivity, like somebody who may never have thought of suicide and was pretty stable in life could seemingly out of nowhere consider suicide after a series of stress. And if they already have like the impulsivity gene, so to speak, they could be at risk. And not only the impulsivity gene, but the access, right? The access to carry out the means in their head in which they want to hurt themselves. So guns are actually the leading cause of suicides. I think the last time I checked the stats, you guys can read that information on CDC. They just released a recent study on the methods in which people end up committing suicide, and it's actually largely through the use of guns, which is why we need comprehensive gun reform, which includes mental health reform, but that's another subject. But yeah, so if somebody's impulsive and then they actually have all these, the right combination of stressors, and then they have access to the means in which they want to carry out this suicidal ideation, then they're really at high risk to have a completed suicide. So that could be guns, a rope, or oftentimes with women, a bottle of pills. It's usually men who end up hurting themselves in a violent way, statistically speaking. So that's another kind of side note. So the thing is, people may not always tell you that they're suicidal or feeling hopeless. That's the first thing that you can ask them. It's amazing how many people will actually say, yep, I am having those thoughts. But sometimes they're not going to tell you. The bottom line is, if you suspect that somebody is not doing well and the thought of them hurting themselves crosses your mind, it's probably better to check that out versus to not do anything about it. That might also help you, feel like you were part of the solution in the event this person did end up hurting themselves. But the bottom line is, suicide is not your fault. The person who wants to commit it will do it, regardless of, sometimes, unfortunately, regardless of how many interventions that are presented to them. That is the harsh reality of it. But I just refuse to accept that, we just have to not do anything about it. So this is my way of helping in a larger way, is to just encourage people and educate people about the signs so that you can feel empowered to support people. And simply put, some of the things you can do if you're recognizing, or you're recognizing signs, or you're concerned about somebody, is to just, let them know, hey, I'm here for you. If you need anything, and really mean it, right? And not just a text. This is the time you actually want to call somebody and really, show your active presence and support. Texts and Facebook messages and, emails, they're great, but that's not an active form of support. There's nothing replaces that human contact. So pick up the phone or go to their house if that's an appropriate thing to do, and just really let your love and presence be felt and known, and let them know that you're there and really mean it. If you are feeling comfortable, you can even offer to help them find a therapist or take them to the nearest hospital if the situation calls for that. When in doubt, you can also call a local crisis line in your area or a suicide hotline, and they will walk you through the steps and give you lots of other resources. I used to personally work at a crisis hotline, and I can't tell you how many times we've received calls from loved ones. I would say probably 70 to 80% of my calls were from loved ones and not so much from the person experiencing suicide. But they do call as well and ask for help. But anyway, in San Diego, the San Diego Access and Crisis Line, which is open 24 hours, 7 days a week, is 888-724-7240. Again, 888-724-7240. They don't close, holidays, whatever day it is, they're open. So feel free to call them, and I promise you they will be able to give you more specific and individualized assistance for your particular situation. But when in doubt, it won't hurt to show love and concern and express how much you care about their well-being, and to follow up on that, to be consistent in showing that you are there for them through your actions. Of course, I'm not saying like be codependent and be unhealthy about it, but I think you guys are getting the idea. Like, when in doubt, love, support, care, concern, actively showing up for them, being present physically. Those are some of the things that you guys can do to attempt to really mitigate some of these risk factors. And call a crisis line if you're in doubt and need additional support or help. And at the end of the day, whatever this person decides to do, it's not your fault. But you can be part of the solution. That's really the message. Okay? And for all of those people who've had loved ones commit suicide, my thoughts and prayers are with you. I personally understand that because I've had one of my really good friends also commit suicide, and it can be a mind F, and a lot of really intense mixed feelings can surface from that experience. But there is help, there is support. Just do the best that you can. That's all you can ever do in life, really, and focus on the things that you have control over, and understand that this is a very complicated issue that requires the help of an entire community if we really want to reduce the rates of suicide. But you can do your part and start with you, just by being willing to take a chance and a risk in expressing your love and concern for somebody. Okay? Thank you so much for listening, and have a great weekend, you guys, and I will talk to you again next time, because we all need a little nudge. This is Cecile Ahrens, and bye for now.